fires at once.
Yeah.
That's scary. And, it's funny. You keep searching for the Hollywood sign. And Moonshadows, that restaurant in Malibu, right on the ocean, it's almost like you were checking on old friends, hoping they were okay.
So were they in danger? Like, were they in the path of these fires?
Well, the information we have, it's kind of limited. But your searches for stuff like Hollywood Hills fire map and Sunset Fire evacuation map, that does place the fires pretty close to a lot of well-known places.
So, like, right in the thick of it.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so to put your mind at ease, it seems like the Hollywood sign is still standing. At least based on searches like, did the Hollywood sign burn down today?
Right.
But it sounds like it was close, though.
Yeah, definitely threatened.
And what about the other places? Griffith Observatory? The Hollywood Bowl? Were they in danger, too?
Well, searches for Griffith Observatory and Hollywood Bowl fires suggest they were near the fires, but thankfully seem to have come out okay.
Okay, that's something. But what about moonshadows? Yeah, unfortunately, the Malibu fire map searches, they do indicate that it was probably right in the path of that fire.
Oh, man. That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It makes you think about all the losses people must have gone through. Not just landmarks, but like their homes, their belongings. And, you searched a lot about evacuation maps and containment levels. What can you tell us about what people were going through? Those who lived in the areas hit by these fires.
Well, containment is really key when it comes to fighting wildfires.
Right.
It basically means creating a barrier around the fire, like a secure perimeter to stop it from spreading.
So like they're trying to box it in.
Exactly. And firefighters, they do this in different ways. Clearing out vegetation, digging trenches to act as fire breaks. Sometimes they even set controlled backfires.
Controlled backfires.
Yeah, it's like they're removing fuel in the fire's path. Fighting fire with fire, in a way. And then the fact that you searched for LA fire evacuation zone map so many times, well, that suggests there were widespread evacuations happening.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah, it really shows how serious these fires were.
Evacuations, that's a huge disruption to people's lives.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of folks were impacted. The biggest question, the one you kept coming back to in your searches was, how did the fire start?
It's a natural question to ask.
Right. Everyone wants to know, especially here in California, wildfires, there's sadly a recurring threat.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, based on the search data we have, the specific causes of these 2025 fires, well, they aren't really clear. Figuring out how wildfires start, it's actually super complicated.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. And it can take a long time to pinpoint the exact origin and all the factors that contributed.
Okay, so we might not know the exact answers about these specific fires, but you also looked into broader factors, right? Like, what makes California so prone to wildfires in the first place? Can you tell us a little about that?
Sure. There are a bunch of factors that contribute to wildfires in California. One thing that comes to mind is your search for a red flag warning.
Oh, yeah, what does that even mean?
So basically, a red flag warning means that the weather conditions are ripe for a wildfire to start and spread rapidly. Things like strong winds, low humidity, and super dry vegetation.
So it's like a perfect storm, basically.
Exactly. And those Santa Ana winds, they're infamous here in Southern California.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
They're notorious for fanning the flames of wildfires.
So those winds, combined with all the dry brush, it's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Your searches, they suggest you were really trying to track these fires as they were happening. Searches like LA Fire Map Now, Fire Tracker California, and Live News Los Angeles. It's like you wanted real-time updates, didn't you?
It really does seem that way. The sheer number of searches you made, especially those focused on fire maps and updates on containment, it highlights this real desire to understand what was happening, moment by moment. You were digging deep to understand the fire's path, the potential impact.
And let's be honest, looking at those fire maps, they can be scary, especially when you see those red zones creeping closer and closer to places you know. I see searches for specific neighborhoods, West Hollywood Fire Map, Studio City Fire Map. It's like you were checking on different parts of the city, hoping for the best.
It's completely understandable. You're drawn to the places you're familiar with, worried about the areas you know and love when they're being threatened.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the places themselves, it's the people who live there. Your search for how many homes lost in Palisades fire that really speaks volumes. That question goes straight to the heart of how these fires affect people, the human cost.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Wildfires, they're not just events on a map. They represent very real losses, disruptions to people's lives, and for some, the very real possibility of losing their home.
It's interesting. You seemed really focused on Runyon Canyon. Searches like Runyon Canyon Fire, Runyon Canyon Fire map, even just Runyon Fire. What was it about that place, you think?
Well, Runyon Canyon, it's a pretty popular spot. Like, a lot of people in LA love to hike there.
Yeah, for sure. Those views of the city, they're incredible.
Exactly. So it makes sense you were concerned about it. I mean, it's that reminder that in LA, nature and city life, they're really close.
Totally. And speaking of places that are iconic in LA, you also searched a lot about Sunset Boulevard, Sunset Fire, Sunset Fire evacuation map, things like that. What was happening along Sunset with those fires?
Yeah. Sunset Boulevard, it's got that legendary status, right? It seems like it was pretty heavily impacted by that Sunset Fire. Your searches, they suggest the boulevard itself was affected, and evacuations, they were probably happening all over that area.
Sunset Boulevard on fire. It's just, I don't know, hard to picture. Another area that came up in your searches was Pacific Palisades. Pacific Palisades fire map today, Palisades fire containment level, how many homes lost in Palisades fire. Those searches, they paint a pretty concerning picture.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like the Pacific Palisades, or the Palisades fire, like you called it, that was a major one, maybe even the most intense of all these fires. And those repeated searches for containment maps, that suggests it was a real struggle to get that fire under control. And the question about homes lost, I mean, that really speaks to the potential for just massive property damage, which sadly happens a lot with these kinds of fires.
Yeah, it's those personal losses that are the hardest to think about. And it's not just homes either, right? We talked about moonshadows earlier. You even searched moonshadows Malibu fire specifically. I mean, it's not just a building. It's a place with memories for people.
Right, exactly. If moonshadows was lost, that would be significant. I mean, it was a real part of Malibu.
Okay, so switching gears a bit here. I'm seeing searches for Magic Castle, Los Angeles. The Magic Castle. Was that place in danger too?
It seems like it. The Magic Castle, with its whole mysterious vibe, it looks like it was close to one of the fire zones, at least based on what you were searching.
It's one of those places that's so LA. It would have been a real shame to lose it. And speaking of unique LA spots, you even searched for the Eames House, that architectural masterpiece. Was that in danger too?
Well, we can't say for certain, but you were searching for Eames House alongside LA fire map and evacuation zones. So it seems like you were definitely worried about it. And I get it. It's a super important building.
It's been a real roller coaster going through these searches, worrying about landmarks, people's homes, and then that big question of how these fires even started. What stands out to you the most from all of this?
I think what strikes me is how connected everything is. These fires, they show how a natural disaster, it doesn't just impact nature. It affects homes, businesses, entire communities, even those places that have a cultural or historical meaning.
Yeah, like a ripple effect.
Mm.
It's kind of overwhelming to think about, honestly. But there is a hopeful side to your searches, too. You searched for Red Cross and donations for fire victims. It seems like you were already thinking about ways to help.
That's a good observation. Even in the face of a tragedy, people want to help each other. It's really powerful.
It's a reminder that even when things are tough, people come together to support each other. But we still don't know the full story of these fires, do we? I mean, the full extent of the damage, the long-term effects. It's still unfolding.
You're right. This deep dive, it's just a small glimpse into what happened. And even though we've uncovered some answers, it's also brought up even more questions. Questions that'll continue to be explored as the community recovers and rebuilds.
And as we head into the final part of our deep dive, we're going to see how you searched for information during those first few days. Your searches tell a story, not just about the fires themselves, but your journey to understand what was going on. Okay, so now we're getting into how you were finding information, in those first few days after the fires started. It's really interesting to see your approach because you weren't just passively watching the news. You were actively looking for it from all sorts of places. I'm seeing searches for Fox News Live and KTLA5, but also things like Cal Fire Map and SoCal Fire Map. It's like you were trying to get the full picture.
Yeah, exactly. You were using all these different sources, like the traditional news, but also platforms that give you real-time fire data. It shows you knew how to find information during a crisis. The different sources give you different perspectives.
You were piecing it all together like a detective.
Yeah.
And you didn't just stick to, like, the news either. I see ready.ca.gov and LAFD evacuation zone in your searches, too. You wanted to hear it straight from the source, right, from the authority.
It makes sense. When things are chaotic, you want reliable information. You don't want to be misled. Searching government agencies and emergency services, it shows you were looking for trustworthy guidance.
And I noticed you kept repeating certain searches. sometimes with little changes. Like, you wouldn't stop until you found exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah, finding information in an emergency, it can be tough. It takes patience, knowing where to look, and you definitely had that.
You were determined. It's honestly pretty inspiring. Even with all the chaos, you wanted to stay informed.
Knowledge really is power, especially in those situations.
Totally. So as we wrap up our look at the LA fires of 2025, what's the big takeaway? What do you hope our listener remembers?
Well, these fires were tragic, no doubt. But they also remind us how important it is to be prepared, to have a community, to help each other. And that even after something terrible happens, people are resilient.
Absolutely. And to our listener, if you're out there, and this has brought up a lot of emotions, maybe feeling overwhelmed, please know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
There are resources, people who want to help, and so much information to guide you.
Right. And never underestimate how powerful it is to be curious, to keep learning. You took a deep dive into this event, and that's amazing. Keep asking questions, keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Mm-hmm.
Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, keep diving deep.